Does your faith feel disconnected from daily life? Discover Heaven Meets Earth, a visually stunning devotional by Josh Nadeau. Over 40 days, engage in prayer, reflection, and original art as you explore the Nicene Creed, ancient words that resonate today. This journey of spiritual formation merges beauty with timeless truth, helping you find God in everyday moments. Experience the richness of Christian belief with Heaven Meets Earth, available wherever books are sold.
The world is becoming increasingly proficient at telling stories that deny God. As such, we need Thinking Christian to become as natural as breathing. Welcome to the Thinking Christian podcast. I'm Dr. James Spencer. Through calm, thoughtful, theological discussions, Thinking Christian highlights the ways God is working in the world and questions the underlying social, cultural, and political assumptions that hinder Christians from becoming more like Christ. Now, on to today's episode of Thinking Christian. Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Thinking Christian. I'm Dr. James Spencer, and I'm joined today by Andrea Anderson, who is a Christian business coach and author. She's written a couple of different books. I think you have one coming out here in 2026 as well, but the one I had the pleasure of reading today was Bread Like Rain. And so I'm excited to welcome Andrea to the show and interested in our conversation. So welcome, Andrea. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So I've done a fair amount of consulting myself, so I'm kind of interested in your background and how you got into consulting, what really drove you there, and maybe what your passions are. So why don't you introduce yourself a little bit to the audience and give a bit of your background?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I like to start with, especially when I'm talking to a Christian audience, is that I was not always Christian. In fact, I grew up in what I call a cultural Christian home. And then I went through a period of being atheist, agnostic, kind of bounced between the two in my early teens to kind of mid 20s. And so it was out of that, actually it was through the death of my grandfather that got me to reconsider. So I like to share it because I think it's really easy to make assumptions, especially when you're talking to someone in a format like this, like assuming, oh, like she's always known the Lord. And that's so far from the truth. So that's a little bit on the personal side. On the business side, the consulting, really where I came into it was out of a time of prayer where I was asking the Lord, how do I actually help people on a transformative level? This came out of a different business that I had at the time where I was sensing there was more going on for the people that I was encountering than in this case, it was an organizing business. Then it was just like, oh, I don't know how to organize my stuff. And the idea of going into a space, organizing it, but going back to chaos wasn't sitting well with me. So I was asking the Lord, how do I help people on a transformative level? And for the first time ever in my faith walk, I heard almost audibly life coach. You know, it was spoken into my spirit. And this was in the early 2000s. Like coaching was virtually unheard of. I'm like, what is a life coach? And I'm like, am I making this up? And so I was like, okay, Lord, if this is you, not me, I'll Google it and it'll be a thing, which it was. So that's where I got my certification. I'll skip over a lot of the middle parts of my story, but really while I am here to work with Christian business owners and help them apply a surrendered strategy method to their business to maximize their profitability, make it sustainable. Really, what my work represents is the deeper level transformation that God wants to do in them and also through them, because that's what lasts into eternity.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting. So you were in the organization business, if I'm understanding you correctly. You were doing more like helping people clean up the mess of their lives in physical spaces.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So, and then kind of pivoted over into more of a symbolic organizing lives, a symbolic theological organizing of lives.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's fun to see how God works.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit more about your sort of non-Christian background. I grew up, it sounds like we have a lot in common because I grew up Lutheran. I should say I grew up attending a Lutheran church, but really just not caring one way or the other, about being Lutheran or particularly about being Christian. Didn't have any sort of interest in Jesus per se,
Mm-hmm.
was really, I just saw, what I was learning at church is a good way to stay out of trouble. And so I'm interested to just dive a little bit more into that.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Canada, and before we moved to the States, which is where I live now, we went to an Anglican church. So I equivalent like Anglican Episcopals, like the parallel to that in the States, and Lutheran and Methodist is like kind of like the OG, like the OG churches on the Protestant side. And so, yeah, likewise, we went to church. My parents were heavily involved. We loved the church that we went to. It was very family oriented. So I have fond memories of like going to Sunday school, being involved in the things the church would put on for families, helping in Sunday school as I got older. But yeah, that idea of a relationship with Jesus in my nuclear family, like that idea was if somebody had asked us that, we'd been like, what do you mean? Like, we go to church, we do the thing. It's like, what are you talking about a relationship? And so when we moved to the States, my mom especially wanted to try and find another church because it's just like, this is what we do, Yeah. And we did land on one in an Episcopal church, but it wasn't vibrant on many levels. And again, especially when you don't have a relationship with the Lord, I see picking churches, and I talk about this in the book. It's like a restaurant. It's like, where are we going to eat today?
Right.
So at some point, like my dad I could tell, and I was in my early teens, I could tell that he wasn't really interested. And at some point, I think he was just like, I don't want to go. So I was like, well, if Dad's not going, I'm not going. Yeah. And then what really kicked me into that atheism agnostic period was I was in, I think, 7th grade, and we were learning about evolution. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, my conclusion was, well, that explains away the need for God. So I was kind of like, washed my hands of him, and I'm like going on my merry way in unbelief. But that's kind of what the early stage looked like.
Very good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so you came to faith and got into really life coaching. Mm-hmm. You were a Christian at that point, correct? Or no?
Yes.
Just to kind of clarify the timeline.
Yeah, no, that's good clarification. Yes. Like so I don't have an exact date of belief. I know it was somewhere around 2003, 2005. So yeah, somewhere around there, like around 20 years ago, just because so my grandfather died in the time that I was dating my husband. And when we got engaged and were planning for marriage, like by that point, my heart had softened enough where I was like, oh, I want a minister to marry us. But I know I wasn't a believer at that point. It was just the Lord was bringing me along because my grandfather died. My husband and I were dating, got engaged and all of that. So, and then when I became pregnant with our first child, we have 4, I know at some point there was some sort of belief that was happening. I just don't have that exact day when I moved from, curious, like, I think there's something there to, oh yes, I need to accept Christ.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, talk to me a little bit about, so you're now into Christian business coaching. Mm-hmm. And one of the things you said just a minute ago was you were tired of helping people organize and then seeing things fall back into chaos. And I will say, sadly, that sometimes my experience consulting was just that. It was like whenever I had institutions keep calling me back, I'm going, but I could have sworn we had this fixed the last time. Like, what happened? Mm-hmm. So how do you deal with that ongoing now? Is that a shift in your consulting practice that you found that you get a little bit more of a durable result out of what you're doing now?
Yes. And I love that you asked that question, because this is something that the Lord has been bringing into greater clarity about, like, one, what I need to look out for in my own business, but also really look out for in clients. And one of the themes that he's highlighted is how self-reliance and control, that's what creates like the chaos, the disarray.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed that when you are called to lead in some way, so in this case, a business, your a lot of your default and what your inherent characteristics are to get things done. Like you typically have a high capacity, you're very comfortable doing, achieving, making decisions. And you need that as a leader. Otherwise, you're not going to be leading. No one's going to follow you, right? So, but because we live in a fallen world, there's always like kind of like a shadow aspect, some of our gifts where it gets distorted. And so what happens is when we have these natural inherent characteristics that on the one side are helpful and needed, at some point they actually work against us because we overstep the boundaries. Yeah. And what I've noticed for myself as well as in clients is like we often like get in the weeds and we're trying to approach, especially when it's a business and a vision the Lord has given you, we're trying to solve the issues like at the ground level instead of pulling our eyes up and like building and moving from like a top down aspect. And so I know the reason that my clients get lasting results and I don't see that repeating pattern of chaos is because I'm constantly asking them, what is the Lord saying? I'm constantly pointing their eyes to him and asking them to get clear and to get confirmation of like, what is the blueprint? What is he asking you to do? And then we move from there. I mean, and there's a lot of pieces to it. I'm also listening for where are they out of sync with God? Where's that misalignment coming in? Why is it there? And then we have to pull that out. So it's like shifting patterns, like removing disruptive patterns. And because we have the Lord, like we're building for essentially eternal results, right? So we're looking at what is the deeper transformation and foundational work the Lord wants to do. And in him, as long as your heart is, I want what you want, Lord, which is why my clients come to me. That's what they want. That's why it lasts. It's also why when I'm working with clients in one-on-one and intense, why I only work with Christians, because I can work on surface level business issues with non-believers. But when you're talking about transformation and lasting results, that only comes through Jesus.
Yeah. It's interesting. I teach on leadership for Wheaton College. And one of the things that I talk about in class is that leadership should emerge from discipleship. And it just strikes me that we have some resonance on that, is that, you're as a leader, you're not just deciding that you are going to follow Jesus until it's inconvenient to do so. And then you're going to implement a business strategy, whether he likes it or not. You're trying to actually follow him even in your business practices, not simply from an ethical standpoint, although I think that's important too, but from a directional and transformational perspective.
Yes, exactly.
So you work primarily then one-on-one kind of with leaders?
That's how I do love to work with clients because, well, and I'm sure you've experienced this too. When you work one-on-one, when you have somebody's attention all on you, like you just get to, you get that momentum, you get to the root and also the clarity a lot faster. I do also have a group component as well. For people, sometimes it's for one-on-one clients who are ready to transition from kind of more of that intense work, but they like that continued focus. And then sometimes it's people will come to me through group and then move into one-on-one with me. But the one-on-one, and also because again, I'm listening for where there's misalignment, and I can do that in a group setting to a certain extent, but really it gets to a point where I'm like, I really just need to be in the room one-on-one with them.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I as you're talking about it, I do mostly organizational stuff when I do it. And so it does tend to, yes, the leader needs to sort of be guiding and directing and figuring out where they want to go. And when I've had those opportunities to sort of help leaders, I do see better results. I see more durable results. Yeah. When I'm just working with an organization and kind of implementing or trying to optimize one area, you don't see it as durable. Things tend to slip. And I think it's partially because you're not really, you're aligning a system, but then all the people who are involved in that system really have to be on the same page. You're assuming a lot, I guess is what I'm saying, when you're working on that systems approach and you're not really addressing the people side of it as much.
Yeah. And in that kind of setting, I mean, you have a lot of different personalities and strengths, and it's like, have they bought into it? How do they really feel? I'm sure from an organizational level, like, are they being compelled versus like when you're working one-on-one with the leader, you assume like they want to be there, they're not being, in most cases, like being I guess it could be they're not like the CEO. I guess they could be told to do this, but most of the time it's like, okay, I'm going with you. But that's also why I believe too with, that, I mean, there definitely are effective ways to do groups. And I have seen in the way that I do group sessions that clients do get the results that they want. Because again, I'm putting the court more in the Lord's hands, like helping them to look at him. But I think a lot of times in group settings, it just caps what you're able to do without some like one-on-one on the side.
Americans have a big healthcare problem. Over 100 million U.S. citizens carry medical debt, but that's not the whole story. With health insurance, your out-of-pocket and monthly costs are way too high. You get surprise bills, denied claims, and poor customer service. That's a serious burden. As Christians, we don't have to pay for a broken system. Christian Healthcare Ministries is an alternative to health insurance at half the cost. You can enroll at any time and join a proven faith-based solution that's both reliable and affordable. CHM isn't just help, it's financial and spiritual support when you need it most. Families across the country count on CHM to step in during their hardest moments, and it works. Stand up to health insurance with a low-cost, biblical solution. Join CHM today by visiting chministries.org/wellness. That's chministries.org/wellness.
Faith shapes how we live, and it should shape how we steward our money too. That's why 316 Financial exists. We're an online bank created to help people align their finances with their faith and their values. At 316 Financial, 10% of our profits are given back to faith-based ministries, supporting work that makes a lasting difference. It's a simple idea. Everyday banking can be a powerful way to live generously, and you don't have to sacrifice quality to bank with purpose. 316 Financial offers modern online banking, no monthly fees, free ATM access nationwide, and competitive interest rates designed to help your money grow responsibly. Whether you're saving for the future, managing everyday expenses, or looking for a bank that reflects what matters most to you, 316 Financial makes it easy to bank with intention. Learn more and open an account today at bank316.com. Banking services are provided by 316 Financial, a division of Primis Bank, member FDIC.
I tend to agree. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I wonder, so as you've done the consulting with business leaders, how much of this do you find really carries over into the church? It's difficult for me sometimes to walk into a church and not notice things that, when I've gotten, especially if I've just gotten done with a consulting engagement, I sort of have that mindset and I walk in and I'm like, oh, geez, we could fix that. How do you think about that when you're, sitting in church with a pastor and with other, leaders? Do you see them sort of, you find yourself wishing you could help them as well?
Yes. Like, thankfully I'm at a church where I feel like the leadership is as solid as leadership can be, not perfect. Yeah. We're not going to find perfection. Right. But, so I appreciate that. I appreciate the heart and intent, at least the leaders at our church approach things. I think what I see happening is more in that area of what we do from Sunday's service, like the discipleship, the application, because as I listen to the messages of the sermon, and especially lately, it's been interesting. It's like what our pastor has been sharing. I'm like, yep, like these are the insights that he has been showing me, and like where the gaps are, where the challenges are. But then what I think, and especially given the work with clients, I'm like, okay, but how many people that are sitting here are actually applying it? And because that's what happens when I have clients coming to me. It's like, there's this kind of, I know God needs to be part of it, but what does that actually look like? Like people still think a little bit more like the God box, like the work box, the family.
Yeah.
So it's more of that. And also appreciating that the leadership of our churches only have so much capacity as well. Right. Sure. So yeah, just more along those lines. But I will say when I more like anecdotally hear about challenges in other churches where it's a leadership issue, like that's where I'm like, oh, that like I would love to help correct that, but that's not my calling at this moment. It is with businesses. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Just kind of wanted to hear you talk through some of that. Let me pivot a little bit and maybe talk about some of the ideas I was reading about on your website, read about in your book. I'm interested just to hear a little bit about how you navigate the ideas of following God and success in today's world. That's one of those topics that I've always had a little bit of trouble with, trying to figure out like, yes, following the Lord is what we're supposed to do, but it doesn't always lead to the sort of success that we're looking for, as far as I can tell. And I'm just wondering if you can talk through that a little bit and kind of help me understand your perspective on it.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's actually what, before this podcast, I was like, okay, Lord, what are we going to be talking about? What do you want to share? And the problem is how we define success, right? Yeah. Because, and I think when I had reached out to you and it's like, would you be interested in having this conversation? What the Lord has shown me, and where the problems come in, is where we confuse what we know with what we actually believe, right? So we know, for example, God is trustworthy, but in certain situations, do we believe he's actually trustworthy? No, that is where all of the problems come in. And so when it comes to success, we have to be very careful about how we are individually defining it, because in the way, the application that I see for business, for example, is I do believe if God has called you to business, it is meant to be financially successful, because that's actually the definition of a business. Like if you don't have financial success, like you have an expensive hobby or a liability or a self-funded nonprofit, right? Like to me, it doesn't make sense that God would call you to a model that literally means you are building for profitability.
Yeah.
But we also have to keep in mind, profitability is one aspect of success. It's also how we are building in the process. And I really believe that God is more interested and cares more about our internal and eternal success than ultimately what's happening on the outside, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen for myself that certainly marriage and motherhood has definitely refined me, but being called to entrepreneurship, or really whatever you're called to, he is going to refine you through it, because we need to be purified, right? And so it is a trust walk. It's a faith walk. And what I've realized, through challenges and through like really hard moments, is that one, if I have a financially successful business, but my health and my relationships are compromised, well, is God really going to be like, yay, you? No, he's going to be like, that's a problem, right? Or if you are not building according to how he is asking you, if you're saying, I don't believe you, God, like that you've called me to this, or I'm deciding, I'm calling all the shots, and it's actually, he's like, okay, but I'm going to cap your profitability, even if you're like succeeding in other areas of life. Again, it's like, it's inconsistent. So I guess what I come back to is if we're sincere in saying your will, not mine, that also means his definition of success, his timeline of success, and like all of the pieces about that. In that part.
If I go back, you mentioned, some people still think about the God box, the business box, the family box. We have these sort of this way of compartmentalizing, right? And it isn't, it's unlike, jumping into the water, right? It's impossible not to get wet when you immerse yourself in water. You're just wet. But when we box things up, we can tend to just sort of let God leak into these other areas when we feel like it's necessary. Right. I'll be good enough at family, good enough at business. I'll be a nice, ethical person. But as far as letting Christ lead this, like, I don't know. What does he really know about the financial services industry or, whatever have you? And so there's an interesting, like, just going back to that idea, kind of what I think I hear you saying is that if we're to give ourselves to God with all we are and have, right. Sort of that Deuteronomy 6:4-5, Christ, mind, soul, strength. He repeats that in the New Testament. We're really looking at it as there is a capacity that each one of us has to do that. And there's a sense in which, yes, I can give all I have, but I really can't give more. And if I'm giving part of myself away to business, and ruining my health, ruining my relationships, I'm not really loving God with all I am and have. I'm really loving business and trying to tie God in. And so that success comes as we figure out how to order those loves appropriately. Is that a fair sort of way to riff on that, I guess?
Yeah. So it's always like first things first, right? God first. And we know he does want to be in all areas of our life. Like it isn't just partial or when we decide or, we're like, help, it's like all the things. And yes. And like from there, so if he's called you to marriage, then it's also, God, marriage, kids, and like all of that. But yeah, it's a balance and, it's also highly personal. I think that's also why I like one-on-one work because God doesn't he doesn't work he doesn't create cookie cutters. So while there's principles that apply to all of us, like the nuances of that are going to look different. And so that anyway, it's just like a fascinating journey.
No, I agree. And I mean, I think just if I think back over my career, just through time, I think I would react and respond. And if I went back into my old position that I left, when I was really burnt out, when I had decided that, work was more important than family and, work was more important than health. Like I was that guy. If I went back into that same position today, I'd be okay. I'd handle it completely differently because I've had this sort of time of refinement where I don't know that I meant to submit to God. I knew I needed to change something and went in a direction that I didn't expect, but I'd be lying if I said it felt more haphazard to me than it did determinative. Right.
Yeah.
But I do think that refining that happens across that time is really crucial. And so having someone like you come alongside and say, kind of nudge you in those directions would have been really helpful. I had that occasionally, but I think everybody sort of needs it.
Right. Because we all have blind spots. And also because in our mind, like we can create this echo chamber where our thoughts sound good to us. But the other piece the Lord has been having me lean into is really the language that people are using, right? So when we're talking, we're not always aware of word choices that we have that are actually where we're speaking death or partnering in agreement with what essentially becomes a word curse instead of speaking life or believing life as well. It's just like, we're not able to step outside ourselves to see that. And so that's why, yes, like when you work with someone, why we see if it's the right person to work with, that acceleration on that trajectory. And I've seen that even for myself. Like if I think back to even just last year, the amount of growth personally and business wise came out of it really came with working with this one person who was able to call out things that I hadn't been able to see or hadn't realized how profoundly it was actually impacting many areas of my life. And once that was called out, it's like, whoosh, okay, like it was hard and painful, but it was also exactly what I needed. And had I not gone through that, I don't know that I would have ever come to that realization, or it's just like, at what point would I have come to that realization?
Right.
And it's consistent with the way that God has, what he has written into the foundation of the world, which is we're created for relationship because he is a God of relationship. So you don't see solo heroes in the Bible. Even Jesus, although he could very well have operated solo, he didn't, right? Now he didn't need refinement, but everybody else on planet Earth does. And it's like that aspect of iron sharpening iron. Like if we think that we can figure out some of these things on our own, that is a huge level of self-deception.
I do think it's interesting. And I mean, this kind of goes along with your new book, as I understand it, right? 33 devotionals from the life of Jesus for, sort of with some lessons for Christian entrepreneurs. I know that's not the title. Maybe you can give the title. What is the title?
Rock Solid Business, 33
Rock
lessons from Jesus for entrepreneurs.
I got the 33 right. I knew that.
Yes, you got the 33. Yeah.
Rock Solid Business. And that's coming out 2026, but is it already out on Amazon, or did I just miss that?
No, it's not. It's not out. I was going to do it this month, but that date will probably be pushed back again a bit based on some other things God has brought up. But yes, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I know how that goes. So I guess as I think about the life of Jesus, I think one of the things I'm always cautious of is to say, I agree with you. Jesus didn't need refinement. And yet he shows us the cadence of life necessary to be obedient to the Father in all things. Mm-hmm. And that it wasn't refining for him. It was just natural.
Yeah.
It was the organic way that he knew he had to live life. And I don't think he was doing it as a instructional exercise, maybe partially showing us how to do it. But I don't ever get the sense that Jesus is like, hey, I don't really need to go off into the wilderness by myself and pray. I don't actually need to do that. I'm going to do it so that you can kind of see it because you need the refinement, but I don't. I think he's really in his humanness living this life and recognizing where his strength and power comes from. And I always find that to be a really important distinction so that we don't collapse Jesus into, he didn't need to do any of these. It's like Jesus didn't really need to eat, but he did because it would have been weird if he never ate, It's like, no, he's having the human experience. He doesn't have the sin that we have, but he's showing us the practices that need to be done in order to live in obedience to the Father. Yeah.
And I thank you actually for saying that, because what I meant by refinement is like, he already was pure, right? Like he's perfectly God. So he didn't need to have like the impurities refined out of him because he was already perfect.
Yeah.
We need that part of it. But yes, like I do believe he would take that time away because he knew from how critical it would be to make sure he is focused on what God was actually asking him. Like that strengthening, right? Like that's why we go to him. It's like the one of the most heartbreaking things that I hear is when people think of prayer or worship or like any of those disciplines that we do as like a checklist, because it is easy to fall into that instead of like, no, this is an invitation from your Father to get to know him better, to be strengthened, to be able to be aware and stand against the things of the world that pull us out of fellowship and out of alignment with him.
Americans have a big healthcare problem. Over 100 million citizens carry medical debt while paying for overpriced and complicated health insurance. As Christians, we don't have to pay for a broken system. Christian Healthcare Ministries is an alternative to health insurance at half the cost. Plus, you can enroll at any time. Stand up to health insurance with a biblical solution. Join CHM today by visiting chministries.org/wellness. That's chministries.org/wellness.
Faith shapes how we live, and it should shape how we steward our money too. That's why 316 Financial exists. We're an online bank created to help people align their finances with their faith and their values. At 316 Financial, 10% of our profits are given back to faith-based ministries, supporting work that makes a lasting difference. It's a simple idea. Everyday banking can be a powerful way to live generously, and you don't have to sacrifice quality to bank with purpose. 316 Financial offers modern online banking, no monthly fees, free ATM access nationwide, and competitive interest rates designed to help your money grow responsibly. Whether you're saving for the future, managing everyday expenses, or looking for a bank that reflects what matters most to you, 316 Financial makes it easy to bank with intention. Learn more and open an account today at bank316.com. Banking services are provided by 316 Financial, a division of Primis Bank, member FDIC.
Do you find that people kind of fall into that because they don't want to take the time or don't feel like they have the time?
Oh, yeah. And so that's a belief, right? A belief that they're having. Yeah. The belief is if I take the time to stop and pray or sit with the Lord, I've heard some people see that as lazy. Like they think, oh, I should be doing, not just sitting there. Yeah. Sometimes, they start to think that that's because they're not stewarding. But James, as I thought about, okay, why, like what is really underlying that belief? And if you think about the reason we don't follow through with something that we know to be good is because there's a belief that we're holding about that's like pulling us out of that. And as I've asked Christians, business owner or not, like what it is, do they believe they can hear God, for example? I'll just ask them that.
Yeah.
And it's amazing the number of Christians who say, I don't know if I know how to hear God, or I don't believe that I can hear God. So if you think about it, sitting with God and praying is essentially, it isn't just telling him what you want, although we do that. The understanding is, I want to hear from God. Well, if you don't believe you'll hear from him or you're not sure, well, how motivated are you going to be to want to do a practice that like causes you to just feel inept?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so when I encounter Christians who have that, I'm like, well, okay, first of all, if you believe in Jesus, like, let's make sure, if you've accepted him as your Lord and Savior, then you need to stand on the promises. Like, one, as your good shepherd, he promises you will hear his voice. And because you have the Lord, he promised the Holy Spirit, which literally is our communication line to the Lord. So it's like, you need to activate that. And so that's one of the things I try to do. Like whether it's with clients or leading retreats or whatever, it's like, let's practice like cultivating your ability to hear from the Lord, because then you're going to be more likely to show up in that prayer time or to follow through with some of these things where it's just like about communion with the Lord and not something that makes you feel like you've done your due diligence for the day.
Yeah. And there is a subtle but very real difference between viewing this as something that I check a box for and, okay, now I've done my piety for the day, I can move on, versus really deeply understanding that obedience opens the world up to us. In other words, it gives God opportunities to really show himself to us. And probably the better way to say that is it opens our eyes to recognize what God is already doing. If we're always constantly just trying to take care of the stuff ourselves, we tend to think that we're taking care of it ourselves, right? Versus if we really are following Christ, we start to recognize that God is actually doing things in our life. He's caring for things. He's providing. So, yeah, it's just really fascinating dynamic. I sense that even in my own life, where you do have these sort of subtle falsehoods that tend to drive your behavior in one way or another, that you really start to believe about yourself, and that those you have to be pretty consistent about even questioning your own thoughts and asking, is that true though, really? Or am I just sort of blocking myself out of seeing God do something really spectacular?
Yeah, absolutely. And God gave me an acronym that describes that. I call it the faith optimization gap. And so the letters FOG, fog, we're walking around in fog. And again, it's that difference between what you know and what you really believe. Because if you think about it, belief drives us, because if God didn't write the need to believe, or like if that wasn't the core of how he created us, we wouldn't know we needed to believe in him, or there would be no, like, it would just like interrupt our ability to have faith at all. So yeah, it is being aware of that difference, that gap between what we know or what we think in our natural mind and where true belief actually resides. Yeah. That is consistent with God's character and his principles and his truth.
Yeah. I found it really fascinating over the last year or so. There's been a lot of research done on wisdom out of cognitive psychology, not like biblical wisdom or theological wisdom, but just wisdom in general. And the way they tend to boil it down, and this is a way oversimplification, but we don't have that much time. So you kind of sit back and you say, well, what's relevant in the moment? And it seems to me that way of understanding wisdom, what's relevant in the moment, how do I act in line with what's prioritized in that moment, what's really relevant to me in that moment? For one, it does tend to focus on your skills, your capacities, your priorities, right? If I walk out into the garage, this is my pad example, and I see a bike hanging on the wall, but I can't ride a bike, it's irrelevant to me as a mode of transportation, right? Whereas if I had the skill level to ride it, I could use it in that way. But for me, it's irrelevant. So there's a capacity issue there. But ultimately, I think a lot of times what I'm finding, even as I think about that sort of concept in my own life, is that I just don't always believe that God is that relevant in the moment. And so I'm tending to sort of push him to the side of my life and say, you're great. I know it. You're awesome. I know you created the world, but I have this task to do and I'd really like to get it done. And so maybe just, let me just make sure, the infinitely relevant God, but in this moment, this email really matters, or, whatever it is. And it's like, man, I'm really pushing, I'm really pushing God out of my life. I'm marginalizing him in a way that I shouldn't be.
Yeah. It isn't just like, just wait a minute, God, I'll get back to you after that, which, I mean, we can laugh about it, but yeah, it's like,
it's really what happens.
Yeah. And it just speaks to his patience and who he is. And he hangs with us, like knowing that that's how we can treat him. It's just like where our priorities, where what we can see in front of us is what we gravitate toward, which is why I think scripture says, like, faith is being sure of what you hope for and certain of what you do not see. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because we have to believe that he exists and that he rewards, right, those who seek him. And yeah, so it's really like that testing, what do we really believe about him in those moments where something tangible feels pressing?
Yeah. No, that's a good word. We're kind of coming in toward the end of our time. And so I usually have guests answer sort of one last question. So I'm interested to get your take on this. You don't have to answer it based on anything we've talked about. So whatever you want to say is great. But here's the question. What do you think the church needs to be doing that maybe it's not doing right now, or it's not doing quite as well, to be and make more faithful disciples today?
Ooh, that is a big question. Okay. I was going through the Bible again, like in December, like the whole Bible in December. And one of the things that the Lord had highlighted going through it this time is it has to do with the part of relationships and how we are to be in relationship with one another. And I feel like where the modern day church has evolved to is like this feel good church. I don't believe that, at least in my perception, I don't believe that as a church body, we really are following through with the church discipline model that Jesus outlined.
Yeah.
I think it's very challenging for church leadership to hold this tension between like, we want to love others, but like, what do we do when someone is clearly walking out of step with the Lord? And I think there is a hesitation to correct because of the messages that we get from culture, right? It's kind of just like, do what makes you happy and don't tell me what to do, and being judgmental. And because it's really easy for people just to walk down the door to another, or walk down the street to another church, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wish I had thought of some other specific scriptures, but just looking at how we are to be in relationship with other, and refining. If you think about it, refining is not meant to be a gentle process. Like when God talks about refining, the images that go with it are a refiner's fire and pruning, right? And if you gardened and you know what pruning is, like it's pretty,
yeah.
You know, you look like you're ruining the plant. Like it's, you know, we're not, I don't know, it's not sunshine and rainbows. And so I think we've moved away from that. The other part with, I don't know how like churches, as far as like kind of the institution, like the buildings we go to, say, can do this, because we're also fighting against culture that is consistently moving toward isolationism. So I think that does make discipleship or walking out life together the way we're meant to challenging, because you're literally trying to bring people to something that they might say they want, but in practice becomes hard to walk out.
Yeah.
So I don't know, obviously, like what the answer is, but I think that's also where individually we have that responsibility.
Yeah.
Because we are all part of the body of Christ, is, again, instead of putting God in a box or deciding when we are comfortable about inviting him into our life versus like all aspects, is if we are sincere in surrendering to him and doing his will, like I trust like he will let us know what is needed. Like for me, this year, my word for this year is actually Ephrathah, the be opened, right? Eyes to see, ears to hear, but it's actually in connection to relationships. So he's actually shown me where I have kept relationships, or like just have had a little bit more self-focus in certain areas. And he's been this growing conviction in me about what I need to do, what he's asking me to do to be in relationship and be in community with others. So I think if we did that too, like we have the Holy Spirit helping us in that process. And yes.
No, I think that's good. I mean, I think obviously accountability is crucial, but more than anything else, what I kind of hear you saying is we need to have the conviction that where we're going on Sunday mornings is actually important beyond Sunday mornings. Like this is who we are. Mm-hmm. It's not another thing that we voluntarily go to. It's our identity. And so we need to live into that identity. One of my favorite passages, 1 John 1:9. And I love it because it makes confession a mark of what the Christian life is supposed to look like. And so, we tend to be a little bit more shy about sin. And we want to hide sort of what we've done wrong, and those kind of things. But 1 John 1:9 suggests that no, this confession of sin should be part of what we do with one another. And I really appreciate that answer. I think it's good. And I love that, you're reading through the Bible again, and this is sort of the part that God shows you. I think it's pretty fantastic.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, as we close up, tell people where they can find a little bit more from you. Give your website, and then your old book is out on Amazon right now. Bread Like Rain is out on Amazon, so I'll have that link in the show notes. But give your website and talk about when the new book will be out. Yeah.
So the website, it's andrealeeco.com. I know you'll put the link in there as well. It's easier to find it that way. So the website's the easiest because you can, if you want to see a sneak peek of Bread Like Rain, and that book is about encountering God's miraculous provision in your daily life, and really how it's meant to grow your faith and shape your trust in Him. So you can get a sneak peek of that if you want to see it before just getting the book on Amazon. But yes, the Rock Solid Business, 33 Lessons from Jesus for Entrepreneurs. The actual publication date is a little bit to be determined, but you can get a sneak, or you can sign up on the website for the wait list so that when it releases, you can get it that way. And then if you're a Christian business owner, you could also get onto my email list through my website as well. So the website is the easiest, but thank you for asking.
Okay. We'll have that link in the show notes. I'd encourage you to check it out, everybody, especially those of you who are involved in entrepreneurial pursuits. But I will say I found Bread Like Rain to be helpful to me, and I'm not particularly an entrepreneur. And so I would encourage everybody just to take a look at it. And I think it was a really good read, and I appreciated a lot of your insights, both in the book and on the podcast. We didn't get really around the book, but it was great too. And a lot of the things we talked about, I think, resonate with what you have in the book. So it's always a good way to do it. We give people a little teaser, and then they go and check out the book on Amazon. So I'd encourage you to do that. I'll put the links in the show notes, and everybody can check those out. And just, Andrea, really appreciate you being on the show, and have enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much again for having me here.
No problem. All right, everybody. Well, we will catch you on the next episode of Thinking Christian. So thanks for being here, and take care. Bye. Just want to take a second to thank the team at Life Audio for their partnership with us on the Thinking Christian podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you'll find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more.
Finding uplifting news in today's headlines is often like searching for a needle in a haystack. At the Story Behind podcast, we believe in the power of finding heartwarming tales and are happy to share empowering stories with you every week. Get inspired by the note a waitress received from a patron dining alone, and even hear about how one VIP passenger made a hardworking pilot get emotional before his flight. To start listening to the Story Behind podcast, visit lifeaudio.com